energy. Amen. All right, I'm going to ask right up front, did anybody studying the lesson or anything that you might have studied this week have that aha moment saying, wow, that was good stuff? I'd like to hear from you right up front. It's too bad we don't have a dialect for people who are viewing. Well, maybe we'll dig it out of you as we go along, and maybe you'll have the aha moment as we go along. I can share some of mine, but that would be dominating. So we're going to start right on Sunday's lesson, restoring the fallen. So restoring the fallen, and we can't wait. What do we got?
Oh, I was just saying I'd wait till Tuesday because Tuesday was my aha moment.
Tuesday lesson. Okay, that's great, and that's very fair. Okay, so for Sunday, restoring the fallen. So this focused on Galatians 6:1. And matter of fact, Sunday and Monday focused on Galatians 6:1 pretty much. So I would like to have that read. Is that something you could share and read with us? Read for us? Merwin, can you read that for us as soon as you get there? And while he's turning there, I want to just read out loud the memory verse because we kind of end this whole lesson with that. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are in the household of faith. So do you have Galatians 6:1, Merwin?
Brethren, if man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considerate yourself, lest you also be tempted.
Okay, so if we discover somebody in trespass, we restore in gentleness, and we're careful lest we be tempted ourselves. What kind of wording do you find jumps out at you at that verse? What strikes you about it?
The word restore.
The word restore.
Because it was like God is actually, he sent Jesus to restore us. So that has a lot. There's like, threefold restore us to, to heaven, restore us with our fellow, man. And so I think that restoring, that restoration, the reformation of us, the transformation, it all seems, in there. And it happens if we do it with gentleness, and that's the direction we're headed, to be, gentle, to lead others in that same reformation or restoration for themselves through Christ.
And I'm going to repeat with the short version, and she can correct if I'm wrong. Candy brought out the word restore. God has restored us. And then the word gentle, that as we are restored, we also restore others gently. Well, that's really good. Restore and gentle are really key words in that verse. But I'm going to back up just a little bit. And that verse talks about trespasses. And I want you to turn to Psalms 19 and read 12 to 14. Does somebody want to read that for me? Psalms 19. It's a fairly familiar verse. As we find it. Psalms 19, 12 to 14. And those out there that are viewing, could you please turn to it because I don't think you always hear everybody in the audience. Okay, looks like Candy has it.
Who can understand his errors? Cleanse me from secret faults. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
So what kind of trespasses or errors are talked about in that? Who can understand my errors?
Secret faults.
We got secret.
Yeah.
So there's secret faults, and there's the ones we know about. And I'm going to dig just a little bit more. What does that mean? The secret faults. That obviously we know we know when we err. We have an idea when we err. And a lot of that is presumption on our part. So I'm going to call that presumptuous errors or known errors. But the secret ones, what are they?
Well, can it also just be those that you do secretly and that you don't want to give up? You know, those little sins that we hold on to and that we don't want to give them up. So they're kind of a secret sin. They're kind of like between you and God, but you're not quite ready to release. I'm going to repeat, to the secret sins, what Candy was bringing out, could they be the ones that we keep in secret, that we don't want others to know, and we blind ourselves sometimes and think God doesn't know? But those are still ones that we know about. We have presumed. We know we're doing those errors. I'm going to interject the idea that a secret one would be the ones we don't know. Have you ever gone along in life and said, and suddenly it dawns on you that what you had been doing was wrong? You didn't know it was wrong? Oh, yeah.
Now, I didn't look this up, but didn't the children of Israel have sacrifices for their known sins and for the ones they didn't know they were going to do or were doing? So I'm thinking there's two. Now I'm going to tie it into the lesson here. The known and the unknown. And we're supposed to restore gently. So you see somebody and you say, oh, they're doing something wrong. And we're supposed to restore that gently. But what if you see something, they're doing something wrong, and they don't even know it's wrong? How do you deal with that? Now, if we boldly go up and we say, oh, we need to correct this, ouch, that can almost be offensive.
Isn't it kind of examine yourself and get the plank out of your eye instead of removing the splinter from theirs?
Yes. Examine yourself and take the plank out of your own eye before you examine theirs. It's good. These are all really good thoughts. In the lesson has you read in Matthew, it has you read in Matthew 18:15-17. Could somebody read that one for me? This will be directing us as far as how to restore in gentleness. Somebody have that?
Matthew what?
18, verse 15 through 17.
If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault. I think that would say, no, don't point it out. Just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they do not listen, take one or two others along, that every matter should be established in the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, and if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as if you would a pagan or a tax collector.
So after she read that, can someone sum that up? So we restore how? Kind of a step process.
There's steps up.
What's the first step?
Go to the person. Go quietly to the person. and
Go
try
to the
work it out
person quietly and talk to them
gently.
gently. What's the second step? If they're saying, I'm not listening.
Bring the others along. Yeah, to the elders. Go to the elders.
to the elders, or bring a couple other people along that create that safe environment. Friends. And what if they still don't listen?
The church, like go to the church like in a business session, you know. But I think that they were talking, somewhere I read, and I don't know if it's Mrs. White or if it said taking, you know, go to the person, do it gently, then take two elders who are church, that would be not one side or the other, but that take elders of the church, go before them, and if they're not willing, then take it before like a business session of the church.
Okay, so the third is like, we're down at the end of the road here. We take it to the church through, and it's structured in our church through a business meeting. But this is after a lot of laboring. And I believe,
Then discipline follows.
and then a decision and
But it
discipline.
doesn't mean they can't be restored.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean well, maybe I'll just turn it around. If that happens, what's our position towards them? Do we turn our back to them? Do we don't talk to them anymore? They're gone?
Shun, no,
Don't we continue our restoring? I think that's even more important after that happens. And it's tough, especially if there's been woundings among the other members. That's really tough.
it could go the opposite direction too. You find out that you offended someone, you go to them and try to make it right because you don't know what you did, and they won't come clean with it, and you can't make the amends, you know, too.
That's a good point. It could go the other direction. I'm repeating what you said, that you figured out you offended somebody. Let's not tarry. Go to that person and make amends.
Or you don't know what you did because you heard, because they won't talk to you or something, you heard or whatever to it, and
Right.
they won't talk with you. So there's lots of different scenarios.
Or they don't know you don't know what they did, but you're pretty sure something's up. And if they won't talk to you, then maybe bring in an arbitrator or somebody they trust to. You know, I think that's really important.
Communication.
Communication.
I think it's so easy to judge.
It's easy to
I was
judge.
talking to someone last night when I was doing their hair, and he was really judging the drug addicts, and I understand that, but also, you know, there's legal and there's illegal, and they're both sins. But so I kind of made him aware of that, like he has addictions of his own, and you know, just because it's not that addiction, and you're condemning the people, doesn't mean that you don't have your own problems. So be careful not to judge, because God judges you.
Yes, we be careful not to judge, and relating the experience of somebody judging drug addicts and being hard on them when maybe they were having a problem with the illegal drugs, where we got to look at ourselves. Are we having a problem with the legal drugs? Anyway, again, it goes back to take the plank, self-examination first.
I did it in a nice way, but he understood the other point of view.
Hopefully there is the victory. And I believe that sometimes, no, I'll change it. I believe that even though you can point out errors, you have to be patient, because it's really the Holy Spirit that convicts them. And they may hear you, but if you're loving and continue, down the road, it'll click. I mean, it has with me. Oh, yeah.
If someone kind of gives you a different point of view, sometimes without, you know, being harsh about it, but like there's different ways of thinking about things.
Yeah, different
that
ways of
you
thinking
never
about
thought
things.
about before.
Right. And you know what? Their input could be revealing to ourselves, to saying, oh, that's their position. All good stuff. I want to ask one more question, and then we're going to move on. Ellen White talks about restoring in meekness, visited and labored. This is not just a one-time visit, oh, you didn't hear me, you didn't change your ways. This is labored. So what does it mean to to restore in meekness, visited, and labor. And what does it look like when everybody is so busy today? I mean, we're really on a time crunch. Even those people that, quotes, are retired are probably more busy than they ever have been. How do you restore when you're so busy? I'm just kind of throwing that out as, how do we do that?
And now that I'm retired, sometimes I get up at 4 in the morning, retire at 10.
Yeah, retire by getting up at 4 and retire at 10 at night. Does anybody have any ideas how in our busy society? If no one has ideas, you're matched to me, because I don't know how do you have time? How do you have time to reach out?
You know, technology can be good or bad, but I have a friend here at the church that texts me sometimes.
Technology, there's something to it.
You know, it can be short and sweet and gets the point across, and you didn't have to take a day off to do it.
Okay, that's a really good point. Our society has shifted towards technology. We may not have the time to, and we may be some constraints of going out at the evening and visiting, and people aren't opening their doors as easily because they're scared. They're scared. It's a weird thing that's going on. But we have technology, a short email, those on Facebook. Has anybody used that to talk to other people, to say a gentle word? Maybe those who aren't using it should start trying. Maybe there's a reason. I mean, I've heard from older people saying, I don't want to learn that.
Skype, you can Skype even people that are out of the country. And be able to
Skype around the world, around the country. It's just some food for thought.
If you know the person, you can kind of tell if they need more help than that.
And certainly,
Say, let's meet up for lunch or
yeah,
coffee or
meet
whatever
up,
you want. Yeah.
just an encouraging word. All right, let's move on. These are all good thoughts. Beware of temptation. Okay, what is this day actually talking about on this lesson? Beware of temptation. So it has you read, still on Galatians 6, verse 1, the second part. Do you still have that open, Merwin? Galatians 6, verse 1. Can you read that verse one more time?
Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted.
Okay, we've talked about the restoring in gentleness, but now what about the last part? Consider yourself lest you be tempted. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I don't know, one just came in. I don't know if it's really connected, but, you know, it's like maybe someone, has a problem with alcohol and they're sober now, but they do have struggles, and say that maybe that there's somebody that's down at a bar or whatever, and they're asking to come in or whatever, and they're having problems. Maybe it would be hard for them to go into that situation. Maybe they'd have to meet them in different venues or something.
So if you've struggled with it yourself, like an example of alcoholism, it would be difficult to reach out. And yet I see people who have gone through it, they're the ones reaching out.
Yeah.
Let's examine,
Not in that venue.
well, I'm going to point you to the verses of Matthew 26, 31 to 35. And you can read it, probably should, to bring out a really good point here. Somebody have that to read and share? I know the lesson only points to Matthew 26, 34, but the context around it is, to me, very important. 31 to 35. Matthew 26. Go ahead, Candy. You're first.
Then Jesus said to him, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Jesus said to him, "Assuredly, I say to you that this night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples.
So this is Peter's denial. But it wasn't just Peter's, it was all of them. What happened was I think this fits really well under the beware of temptation. What was it? What happened?
I think that I've been caught in this several times. Be careful not to say I will never do that because
Be careful.
to bite you.
Be careful not to say I will never do that.
Yeah, because
So true.
temptation's always with us.
Merwin, I'm going to start this around before I forget. Thank you. Got it. Okay. What was it that why did Peter do this? He said, "I won't deny the Lord," and yet he did. What happened?
He got scared
He got scared.
because people were accusing him. You're the one that was with that man.
Right. Down the road, Peter wasn't scared, was he?
No.
He hung upside down for his unscaredness. What happened? What was the difference?
Relying on self to relying on Christ.
Bingo. Relying on self-sufficiency. Beware of temptation. I did this for the Lord. I did this. I've worked hard. This is my money going into the building fund. Wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. Who blessed you with the skills? Who blessed you with the job opportunities? Who blessed you with the fish in the net? Who blessed you with a good wife or a family or whatever? Self-sufficiency, I think, is a very real aspect of our life. Ever since sin entered the world, back in Eden, it's been a matter of survival on this earth, hasn't it? And our culture breeds self-sufficiency. I mean, actually, Randy and I butt heads over this a lot. You know, I'm the one, "Oh, I'm sorry I did this." But he's the one that says, "Oh, God loves me, he forgave me." And he's a fix-it person. He's very self-sufficient. He actually struggles with that self-sufficiency. But then when we really butt heads, he's the one apologizing, and I'm the one that's saying, anyway, so we all have problems. That's really the main point I wanted to bring out is the self-sufficiency. Be careful. And one quote from Ellen White on that she's supporting in Proverbs 16:32, the one that talks about he that is slow to anger is greater than the mighty, or he that ruleth spirit is better than he that taketh the city. But she talks about, particularly a message to those who are aging, as long as life shall last, there is need of guarding the affections and passions with a firm purpose. Not one moment can be secured only as we are relying upon God, the life hid with Christ in God. Unfortunately, our young people look to us and they think we have it figured out. They got it figured out. They're older. Boy, we don't.
Mistakes till the end.
We cannot, we are learning constantly till we go in the grave. We got to hang on to Christ. All right, we've arrived at Tuesday's lesson. And I know there was an aha moment for Candy on that. Go ahead.
And it has to do with self-sufficiency, too.
Yes, these two actually blend Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yeah, and it was number 2. It says, God does not intend for us to bear all our burdens alone. Unfortunately, we often are far more willing to help others to carry their burdens than we are allowing others to help us shoulder our own. Paul condemns this attitude of self-sufficiency. As human pride, when we refuse to admit that we also have needs and weaknesses, such pride not only robs us of the comfort of others, but also prevents others from fulfilling the ministry that God has called them to perform.
That's really good. We're going to pause a minute and hand over our offering tag here so she doesn't have to look for it. And what Candy was bringing up is in the lesson on Tuesday, burden bearing. If you look down the lesson, the author brings out that there were 3 points. And this is relating to Galatians 6:5, and 2 to 5. So 2 is bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. I'm jumping down to verse 5. For each one shall bear his own load. It almost seems to contradict, doesn't it? So we bear the burdens, yet we carry our own load. Okay, so the author brings out, and this is what Candy was bringing out, he brings out 3 points. Number 1, all Christians have burdens. Our burdens may differ in size and shape and will vary in kind depending on the providential order of our lives. Now I'm down to the 3rd paragraph. Number 2, God does not intend for us to bear all our burdens alone. We often are far more willing to help others to carry their burdens than we are in allowing others to help us shoulder our own. And this is the self-sufficiency point that Candy was bringing out. That was like, whoa. Anyway, kind of reflects on human pride and self-sufficiency. Such pride not only robs us of the comfort of others, but also prevents others from fulfilling the ministry that God has called them to perform. And 3, God calls us to bear the burdens of others because it is through our actions that God's comfort is made manifest. So the author also brings out that the word burden in Galatians 6:5 is boros. It literally means to carry a heavy load or weight for a long distance, versus the word for, let's see if I can find it, it was also in here. I noted it. Foralton, I'm not even sure it's right, but anyway, it means a ship's cargo or a soldier's backpack, or even a child in the womb. The difference is one type of burden you can lay down. The other is you can't lay down. So there's a huge difference in that. So what are ways to bear another's burdens? Let's talk about that first. What are some ways to bear another's burdens? Kind of blends into what we've been talking about, but not entirely. It is different.
I think that sometimes it's seeing a need.
Seeing a need and helping. What does it look like? Let me ask another twist to this as you're thinking about this. How do you bear burdens across generations? We have a very interesting phenomenon going on in our culture right now. We have 4 generations in a workplace right now, 4 of them. 4 generations. We have the Great Generation, we have the baby boomers, we have the X, and the Y, or the millennials. Soon we're going to have the next one. That one boggles my mind more. And we're a little polarized. Have you noticed? There's polarization going on. Because the Great Generation, I read in one book, was the most intelligent generation, as far as IQ, around. And they're dying. They're going in the grave. We're losing that intelligence. The millennials, on the other end, are the most well-educated generation, and certainly technically savvy. The next one, they just live it and breathe it. It's a whole nother aspect. But let's just talk about that. So if we're carrying one another's burdens, millennials over here, do they even understand the baby boomers and the Great Generation? And vice versa. I won't even go into it because I already experienced a small training in that. But there's a lot of negative thoughts across these generations, and the number one common theme is, they don't respect The other side goes, they don't care or they don't listen. So what are their burdens? Do we even know the burdens across generations? We pray for our sons, our daughters, our granddaughters. Do you understand them? Are they praying for us? Go ahead.
I have the privilege of working with many generations. So I think just by talking to different people all the time, I get to know them better. And
Very,
they
very
get
good
to
point.
know me better, and they also know that I am a Christian, and they ask me questions, and I'm willing to answer them.
She has a wonderful, she's a hairdresser so that she's crossing the generations. Our goal should be, we should be a multi-generation, crossing generations. It's not them against us, is it?
No, but they have preconceived notions, and so do we.
Exactly, that's what I
But,
mean.
you know, as you talk to them and they talk to you, I think that you can come to a common ground and you begin to understand each other's point of view better.
So communication between the generations, can we cross that? Do we just,
And they think we're judgmental, but
Yes.
I also think they're judgmental.
yes,
You know, but we're obviously both judgmental, and we have to try to understand.
we have, I think that's the key. We have to try to understand. We have to take ourselves out of our background and what shaped us and say, okay, this is what shaped them. Can I see it from their viewpoint? And vice versa.
I think it's easy for both sides to build a wall.
Yes.
It's hard to penetrate.
Can we break that wall down? How can we break that wall down? How can we carry one another's burdens? How can we do that? Anybody have any brainstorm idea? I'm curiously asking.
Just be kind to each other.
Be kind.
Sometimes it's hard because they're so willing to lash out, and I try not to. And I think that just works the best. And prayer, lots of prayer.
Lots of prayer. Be kind. Any other thoughts?
Get to know their technology. You know,
Okay.
it can be useful to you just as much.
There's an applicable one. There's something we can do there. Get to know their technology. You're smart. We're really smart. Everybody in here is smart. We can do
If
this.
I get a new phone or a new device, I can't wait to go to work so they can show me how to use it.
That's right. They can show you how to. They're growing up with it in the school. They have the advantage.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're getting it every day. But
I
think,
feel that they can
pat yourself on the back. You're smart enough to figure this out. That's what got you as far as you did. It's okay. I don't call these smartphones. I call them dumb phones. They're a really stupid phone. That's my opinion. Because for a phone application, they're not easy. I'll tell you what, though, they're great. Exactly, they're computers. And it is so fun to have the world at your fingertips and helpful. But for a phone, they've got a lot of redesigning to do. Well, these are really good thoughts, and I don't expect to have all the answers on that, but I did want to put it out there for food for thought through the next week. How can we be a cross-generation, burden-carrying, caring people? We can do this. We can. I believe it. We're going to go to Wednesday's lesson. I'm moving along. Wednesday's lesson, the law of Christ. The law of Christ focuses on, let's read, it's focusing mostly on Galatians 5:14. Would somebody please read that for me? Galatians 5:14.
For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out that you will be destroyed by each other. I think that's really brings it all home today, especially, doesn't it? Because everybody is fighting about things
That's
and
right.
trying to devour each other.
Trying to survive. This is our innate nature, trying to survive. So the verses, for those viewing and may not have read it, is summing it in one word: you should love your neighbor as yourself. But what is our first and great commandment? Let's not forget this. What's the first and greatest commandment? Love. She beat me to the punchline here. It's love God with all your heart, and God is love, isn't it? So this is really talking about the second commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. And it totally relates to bearing and caring about other people, bearing their burdens and caring about. When you love your neighbor as yourself, think about it. What does that really look like? If you really love yourself, you take care of yourself, you feed yourself, you get a roof over your head, you take time out, whatever that recharges you, if you recharge getting with a group of people, you have company. If you recharge by yourself, you get your alone time. Hopefully you do. I know we're really busy. So if you love your neighbor as yourself, don't you want to help them do the same? Feed them, clothe them. If they need recharge time with people, you're the neighbor. Now I'm guilty. I've had a change of neighborhoods here. I live across the street, and I have 2 new neighbors. And I've kind of gotten to know one, then he left. Now I got more new neighbors. And I haven't even crossed paths with the other one. And there's some activity that makes me uncomfortable that's happening over there, but I don't know what it is. So I am totally talking to myself. And of course that's just my neighbor next door. When we talk about neighbors in previous lessons and whatever, of course a neighbor could be anybody, right? Yes.
How about your husband? Love your husband as yourself.
Very good. How about your husband? Love your husband, quotes, neighbor as yourself, vice versa, right? Is that what you're saying? Come on, guys. You really like yourself. Do you really take care of your wife like you take care of yourself? And now flip it around. That wasn't fair to pick on them first. How about wives? Do you really love your husband? Barring that you don't get upset with each other. I get that. I mean, but stop. You can get upset with yourself too, right? How do you deal with yourself when you're mad at yourself? Oh, man. And people have different methods. I'm just going to say, how do you deal with yourself when you're mad at yourself? That's a question. What do you do? What?
I allow myself to be mad for a while, and then I sit down and think about it, and then I come to some sort of resolve about it. And I pray and ask for the right answer.
Okay, allow yourself to be mad a little while, then cool off, and then try to come to resolve, pray about it, and get some answers.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't be nice all the time.
Nobody can.
Myself,
Yeah,
you know, you get
that-
frustrated. I think
that's
it's
right.
frustration.
I think that, yeah, you can't be nice all the time. What about anybody else? Somebody else, how they deal with when they get mad at themselves? How about, do you beat yourself up? Do you really beat yourself up? I know a lot of people who do. I tend to lean more that way. And then I mope around because I feel like scum, right? That's not healthy. That's not healthy at all. We know that. So we need to stop beating ourselves up. I think, go ahead.
Myself sometimes when I get mad, grab the vacuum on, vacuum the floor, get my tiredness, get my madness out. The house is clean. Hallelujah.
Awesome. Come to my house.
Yeah, so you put your energies into can I say restoring?
Focus on the vacuum and keep it clean, then what made you mad.
Focus on
Find
getting,
this driven away from what made you mad, and the house was clean.
okay, so he focuses in cleaning and whatever, and by the time when he's not mad, then everything's clean and nice. Wow, we should try it. For those, I mean, that funnels that energy. Anybody else? Any other ideas? That's a great idea. That's right. I know them. They take off. Isn't that part of a personality where you need your recharge time too? I can't deal with this. It's too much stress. I need to be away and have alone time. But yeah, they get in the car and maybe even squeal out. They might have to because they might have stupidly pulled out in front of somebody, but now they really have to squeal out. Slam the door or something maybe on the way out. Have you ever been mad, and this is totally off point. I've been mad and I walk outside. I didn't mean to slam the door, but the wind caught it at the right time and it slammed and it just goes, oh no. Now it looks like I'm really mad and I really wasn't that mad. Anyway, makes me humble. Well, these are really good thoughts. Any other thoughts of what you do when you're mad?
Get out in nature.
Get out in nature. I tend to lead that. I can't not get out in nature is a huge healing aspect. But it's a little hard if you're, in an apartment and it's late at night and now you've put yourself into danger taking a walk in the neighborhood, right?
Sometimes you can just sit outside for a moment right by your
You can
apartment.
You can sit outside and for a moment. Now, let's apply this. That's how you take care of yourself. Can you apply that to your neighbor? Your neighbor being intra-family. All of us, I'm going to say all of us, I'm lumping it together, have family that's a real struggle to be around. And they're heartbreaks, either one or both. And we get mad at them, we get frustrated, we want to cry, we don't know, they're just not living, they're just, I don't know what you would call it, frustrating. It's okay if they don't have the same value system as you, but it's not okay if they're also a menace in society, right? Those are the real heartbreaks. And can we love them?
You can love them and not always like their actions, but still.
Can love them, but not their actions. Go ahead.
I think it's real easy for older Adventists to be works-oriented, and we're like, oh, they're not, my children are not doing this, my children are not doing that. But in reality, if we can humble ourselves and get off of what we're doing and listen to what they are doing, the way they think, our value system is not their value system. It takes time and patience to learn their value system enough to understand them, and then we can understand why they do or do not do.
Very good point. He's brought up the point that tending to be in the older section that we do not, we're kind of works-oriented, and maybe the youngers aren't, and we, correct me if I get it wrong, but and our value system won't be the same as theirs. But if we take the time to listen and try to understand them, I think that's huge. It's huge key. And you're right. It goes back to the way we grew up, the way we processed. We were works-oriented. You stick with that job, man, you're gonna get the rewards at the end. It's not happening for the younger generation. They stick with it. They look at the results and saying, I don't want to do that. Number one, they say, I don't want to do it that way. I'm coming in with all this education, just put me in management position right from the start. And they are. They want to be managers. They have all the education. And they might not have all the experience. So we need to work across. But yeah, we're works-oriented, tend to be. And, you know, everybody comes from a different background, obviously, even interest. I don't want to categorize too deep. But they're not even allowed to work. I mean, you know, think about it. As kids, what did you do? Did you do a paper route? Did you work on the farm? What did you do? And here, they're paralyzed. They're not allowed. And if they are allowed to work when they're finally 12 or whatever, or older, I don't know what the law is, it's only for a limited time, and you have to treat them certain ways, and a lot of liability there. So they're not works-oriented, and they got really big debts, so they do need the management positions to pay their debts, all that education. Let's move. These are really good points. Thank you. And let's move to Thursday's lesson. The sowing and the reaping, all part of like I said, all of these are enough to spend the whole lesson on. The gospel and the church, the sowing and the reaping. Would somebody read Galatians 6, verse 7?
Do not be deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he will also reap.
Aha. It's our memory verse. So if you don't have a Bible with you, or you don't have it online, or it's too hard because you have fat fingers like I do, so then, that's not our memory verse. I got that wrong. It says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever you sow with, you shall reap. So the lesson brings out, and I want to bring it out again in case you didn't have the lesson with you, that the word makterizo, and I'm terrible with words, so probably wrong, but yeah, it's got to be close. Huh? It only, in that first paragraph under Thursday's lesson, occurs only here in the New Testament, though it often appears in the Greek translation in the Old Testament. It literally means to turn up one's nose in contempt. In the Old Testament, it typically refers to despising of God's prophet. It is even used once to describe graphically a rebellious attitude towards God. To turn up one's nose. So what are some examples of sowing and reaping? And this is kind of the read through here. It gave you a few examples, but there are others. Does anybody just want to mention them rather than look them all up? What's an example of people who sow in the flesh and reap corruption in the Bible? An example in the Bible. Samson. Does anybody remember from reading the lesson what was brought out in Acts 5, 1-5? Who was that? Ananias and Sapphira. What happened there? What happened? What's the sum of that? Ananias, sowing and reaping. What happened? Right. They had this property. They made a commitment to the church. It was probably a building fund going on. Who knows? And then they sold their property and probably got more money than they thought they would get for it. Okay. So it's time, and we have much more to read, but I don't want to leave on a sour note. So one more example, sowing and reaping spiritual benefits would be people like Daniel, and that's kind of our goal.
What about the disciples that you were able to heal?
That's right, the disciples. Go ahead.
I think all the way back to Cain and Abel. Cain fed his own, these are my works. And Abel chose the Spirit, connected with God, and followed God's word, and he reaped that reward.
So Cain and Abel. Abel said, these are mine, self-sufficiency, fell into that self-sufficient and careless And I got that wrong, didn't I? Cain, and then Abel followed God. And let us strive to be connected. Anybody need this lesson, the next lesson quarterlies? They disappeared.
Candy took them.
Oh,
I saw her have a.
oh, yeah, I brought some. Okay, does anybody need one? I'll go get some. Anybody need the next lesson quarterlies?